Tell me a story about a time that you know that you saw something, but you don't ever tell this story because you know that no one would ever believe you. I don't think I've ever told this story before because I would sound like an insane person, but I know it happened. I want to be creeped out. I just watched the video of the girl, the Lyft driver in New Orleans, who says she picked up a vampire. I want more stories like that, but I'll tell you mine. When I was 7, my family was living in a suburb of Chicago, about 30 minutes southwest of the city. My parents were out. They went bowling every Friday night, so I know it was a Friday. Our babysitter, Maria, was over. She was a teenager, probably 16, 17 at the time, and my little sister was about 2. We lived in a split level, so my sister and Maria are downstairs, and I'm in the kitchen. I was looking out the back window, honestly probably waiting for our little neighbor boy to come outside because I had a crush on him, and I was always running outside whenever I saw he would come out. But in our backyard, there was an apple tree, there was a lake, and then there was a fence separating our yard from the neighbor boy's house. It's dusk. The sun is pretty much set, and I see a black panther jump over the fence and come down, stand underneath the apple tree. It was so tall that its shoulders almost came up to the first set of branches. Jet black fur. And we had a house cat, so I know what the house cat size is in relation to this thing. This thing was easily 6 or 7 times the size of our cat. So I start calling for Maria, yelling at her to come up to the kitchen to see this black panther in our backyard. She was taking her time. My sister was crying and she was tending to her. I'm standing there mesmerized by this black panther, and it turns and it looks at me and it makes eye contact. And on its head, this thing was jet black, but on its head, it had a little patch of white fur just going right like this. And we just stare at each other for a good 5 seconds or so. I hear Maria stirring. She's coming into the kitchen, and as she's walking into the kitchen, the panther runs into the lake. I was like, there was a panther in our backyard. Maria's like, it was just a house cat. I'm like, no, it was a panther. Fast forward to later on that night, my parents still aren't home. I'm in bed. I hear our doorbell. It's probably close to 11 o'clock because my parents were still out. They usually came home around 1 in the morning. So naturally, I hear the doorbell ring. I get out of bed. I go to the top of the stairs and I see Maria answering the door. And I'm creeping on the stairs, and she lets this man in, and he's wearing all black. He was very pale. And I hear him tell her basically that he was a traveler who lost his way and he needed to use our phone. It was the 90s, so people didn't have cell phones easily accessible, so he just wanted to use our landline. So Maria lets him in. He's using the phone. It's very muffled. I can't hear what he's saying. I remember the conversation, but I don't. That's where mine and this girl's stories are similar. So after he makes his phone call, he's turning to leave. He walks past the stairs. He looks up at me because I'm still sitting at the top of it, and I see on his head he has a little patch of white hair in the same spot that the panther had. And he looks at Maria and he goes, "Thank you for your help. It's really easy to get lost in the shadows." And he leaves. Now this man shook me. I could not sleep that night. So when my parents got home, I was still awake in bed. I ran downstairs. I told them all about the panther. They chalked it up to an overactive imagination, and they were like, it was just a house cat. You're just letting your imagination get the best of you. And I told them about the man. They were pissed. They were fuming. They fired Maria for letting a strange man into our house, as they should have. But yeah, I don't know. I've looked into it. There have been tons of Black Panther sightings all over Illinois, close to Chicago, and yet the Department of Natural Resources maintains that there are no Black Panthers in Illinois. So yeah, stitch this or let me know in the comments your story, because I know I'm not the only one. Update about the shapeshifter I saw in my backyard in the 1990s, and it's crazy. When I posted this video originally, I thought it was just a panther and it was a coincidence and it was just a weird story that I thought nobody would ever believe me, but so many of you guys started commenting about how it was a shapeshifter, and then I got a crazy email. If you don't want to hear this guy's story in the email, just skip to this part. I got this email this morning and it gave me chills. Okay, so this person emails me and they said, "Hey, I just heard about your Black Panther sighting in the Chicago suburbs back in the 90s and I couldn't believe it. Did this happen to be in Lansing at the lake near Potts Park?" It was. I actually had a similar experience around the same time in the same area. I was a teenager at the time and living with my parents on the lake. I don't have TikTok. My ex-girlfriend from the time reached out on Facebook Messenger to send me your video. We haven't talked in years. I had to reach out to you to tell my story because my story is crazy similar. I was sitting in the yard by the lake with my then girlfriend when we noticed a shadowy figure moving along the shoreline. It wasn't quite nighttime, but dark enough where we couldn't see far into the distance. She pointed it out first, and we initially thought it was a man, but the figure seemed to morph and shift, its form changing between a large dark beast or crouching man. It's hard to explain what it was, as there aren't really words that would do it justice what we saw. Before I could really comprehend what I was seeing, the man cat slipped silently into the water, vanishing without a trace. The air around me felt charged with an eerie energy, and I remember having a goosebumps and the hair on my arms was standing on end. It was one of the most unsettling and mysterious things I've ever witnessed. I haven't really told anyone about it because the entire time I just chalked it up to my mind playing tricks on me, and my then girlfriend and I convinced each other it was just a weird man going swimming. I don't really know. After that encounter, I sought out some answers and spoke to our old neighbor who lived near the lake. He was always kind of into weird stuff and spent a lot of time sitting in his yard and watching the water. He wasn't a professional, but he was a local historian of sorts and knew much about the area's lore. He told me about the legend of the shapeshifter that had roamed these lands for centuries. According to him, this being could take on various forms, often appearing as a panther, a wolf, or a man who could disappear into the water. The old man said the shapeshifter was believed to be a guardian of the area, sometimes a protector, and other times he'd show up when there was change coming. He said the last time he remembers somebody telling him about him showing up was when they built a new development of houses on the lake in the late 1980s. He advised me to always be cautious and trust my instincts when encountering such beings. He shared an anecdote about how the area was originally settled. Long before modern civilization took root, indigenous tribes lived here, coexisting with the land and its mystical inhabitants. They respected the shapeshifter, viewing it as a spirit of the earth. When the first European settlers arrived, they ignored the warnings and built too close to the sacred spots. Strange phenomena like animals and crops disappearing and eerie sightings bothered them until they learned to respect the land's ancient mysteries. The old man believed that the shapeshifter still watched over these lands, reminding those who lived there to honor the past and tread carefully. And he says, I'm not sure what to make of it all, but I can't help but feel that our stories are connected in some way. Maybe there's a deeper mystery at play here. Stay safe out there and let me know if you hear anything else about the area from others. Best, Brent. I'm like, there's no way. So I start Googling. The first thing I type in is Native American tribes in Lansing, Illinois, and this comes up. Through the center of Lansing, running east-west, is a 25-foot-high elongated ridge of sand and gravel deposits that was once a great prominent Indian trail that is now known as Ridge Road. Here's a map of the area. Okay, so this was the lake. This is Ridge Road. So this is how far we are. So then I type in what native tribes lived in the area, and this tribe comes up. Oh my God. They did ceremonies to appease the underworld panther and maintain balance. There's a myth of the underworld panther. In my story, I talked about how the panther disappeared in the water, and look at this journal entry. You can pause to read this if you'd like. But yeah, the underwater panther is apparently a whole thing. So yeah, if you're from this area or you have your own shapeshifter story, please share, because now I'm just going down this entire rabbit hole. One more update about the panther / shapeshifter I saw in my backyard in suburban Illinois when I was a little girl. This will be the last update because I want to be respectful, because I think that the panther and then the man I saw were somehow related to the native tribe that lived on the land before that town was built. So many of you guys reached out to me in DMs and comments saying I should try to find a native person or a native tribe to talk to about my experience, and maybe I'd get some answers. And I thought to myself, well, I know one. I know him through my job. He grew up on a Navajo reservation in New Mexico. So it's not the same tribe as the tribe that lived where I lived at the time, but I was like, this is the closest that I can get. So I went up to him and I was like, hey, I want to be respectful. And I told him the story. And I said, a lot of people are saying that this was a skinwalker. And he like had a visible reaction. Like he was like, I just got goosebumps. Like, I hate that term. And seeing his knee-jerk reaction freaked me out. And then he was like, you know those are real, right? I was like, I'm so sorry. Like, I didn't know. He's like, it's fine. Like, you didn't know. But just so you know, in my culture, skinwalkers are the highest form of evil. In order to become a skinwalker, they have to unalive someone that they love dearly, so like a child or a parent. And he said even talking about skinwalkers in his culture among natives typically means that something horrible will happen to a member of their own family, so they just avoid the topic. I asked him to actually make this video with me. He said he didn't want to, but it was fine if I posted what he said, because the goal was education and because so many people were asking, but out of respect, I'm not going to dig any deeper. He also said that he didn't believe what I saw was a skinwalker, because he said that their eyes look different. Typically, like when you make eye contact, their eyes are like red tinged, and if they make contact with you, the goal is to take form for their benefit. He asked me what I felt when I saw it and when I had contact with it, and if the presence was evil, and I said no, and he was like, well, that you would know, like it wasn't that. Either way, what I saw was my experience, so that's my story, and I will just leave it at that, and I guess I'll never know.
Story time. So I was in my freshman year of college. I was still living at home with my parents, and my grandparents were actually living with us at the time as well. They were in a transitional period. They were moving from their hometown to ours. They were getting a little bit older and wanted to be closer to family. So I remember one night, this was before I ever started sleeping with a television or a nightlight in my room. My room was always jet black. For some reason, I had to get up and use the bathroom really, really bad. So I decided to get up. I walked towards the sliver of light that was coming through the door. And at that same time, I heard my grandparents' bedroom door open up. Now, our doors, if you don't know, were really long. The bottom of the door would always drag the carpet, make a sound when you would, open and close the door. So I heard that sound, and then I heard these footprints, like a sloughing of footprints and slippers, and in the gate of the walk, I knew it was my grandmother. I'll just wait for her to get finished, and then I'll go in myself. So there I was, sitting in the bed. It was like 5 minutes later, and I had not heard the commode flush. I had not heard the door open, any more sloughing of feet as they walked through the hallway, or their bedroom door open and close again. I just heard nothing. So I got a little concerned, so I thought I'd go check. So I, went to the door again and opened the door and kind of peeked through to see. I could see the hallway, I could see the bathroom door. And to my surprise, the bathroom door was wide open. There was no light on. And then I looked at my grandparents' door, and their door was shut. And then I just got this wave of chills and the hair standing on the back of my neck. And I thought, that is really, really weird. I know I was not asleep. I didn't miss anything. There was just nothing. So, as puzzled and perplexed as I was, I said, you know what, I've got to go. I don't care. I'm just going to go to the bathroom. So I ran, and I got back out, and I went to bed. Tried to go back to sleep. And this is where the creepy stuff starts happening. I start hearing the shuffling of feet again, as though they're walking through the carpet on bedroom slippers. And instead of it being down the hallway, it sounded like it was coming from inside my bedroom, coming closer to me. And I couldn't see anything. I couldn't. It was freaking me out. I totally went into this panic mode. And what made it worse was that I couldn't move. I could turn my head left to right. I could roll my eyes back and forth. I could open up my mouth, but I couldn't make any sounds. I started screaming for my mom and my dad. It was just dead silent. I couldn't move my lower body at all. That fight or flight syndrome just kicked all in, and in my mind was telling me these steps are getting closer, and if you don't get out of your room, it's going to be very bad. I felt like I was going to be not here anymore. The problem I had was I couldn't move, so I thought to myself, if I'm dreaming, I'm going to try to wiggle my hands. I want to bite my finger to make sure that I am not dreaming, and if I'm awake, I want to make sure that I'm awake. So I started wiggling my hands, and sure enough, I started to get mobility back in my hands, and at that same time, I put my finger in my mouth, and I just chomped down as hard as I could, and it hurt like hell. And I knew right then and there that I was not asleep, I was awake. So I bolted out of that room. I did not even go to my parents' room. I didn't even feel safe with them there. I just felt like whatever was in my room was worse than anything on this earth. So I run downstairs, I go to the family room, I turn on all the lights, including the television, and I stay up all night long. I was terrified. I would not go back to sleep whatsoever. And that was the start of many, many more occurrences. And if you want to give me a follow, I'm going to talk more about all of the personal experiences that I've had, including some other fun, interesting, unsolved, or supernatural stories. That's what I've got. It's pretty creepy. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the story, and I hope to see you in the next one. Story time. So, I want you to watch this to the end because I need your opinion on what this might have been. But this was in 2003. I was planning on moving into my grandparents' house. My grandmother had moved into an assisted living, and unfortunately my grandfather had passed away roughly 2 years prior to this. But before I moved in, my sister and brother-in-law had lived there, and there had been a few strange occurrences that she had told me about that we thought were kind of bizarre. She had said on some occasions that the television in the living room or in the bedroom would just come on. And, we kind of debunked this as probably the remote, but she did say that there were some other things that had happened. We really didn't think too much of it. But when I moved in with my best friend and his older brother. And we had a great time. It was good times. I was working locally, and my best friend was working from home as an entrepreneur building websites for companies. So we had get-togethers pretty regularly where we had friends to spend the night. On countless times, my friends would, come to us or come to me and say, hey, what time did you guys stay up till last night? Because we heard y'all all night long, and what were y'all doing outside the door? Y'all trying to play a joke? No, we went to bed right soon after you did. So we were kind of puzzled by what they may have been hearing. We didn't know if maybe they were overhearing a TV or something. But this one occurrence I cannot explain. So one day I decided to come home for lunch. And when I got home, my friend was obviously doing his job, working, and I was making lunch. I sat down to eat, and then all of a sudden, this unexplainably loud noise came from the bathroom down the hallway. It was the guest bathroom. It sounded as though someone had taken the door to the lavatory, opened it, and slammed it as hard as they could. We both shot up and looked at each other like, what in the world was that? And he looked at me and says, man, I'll be honest with you, this happens a lot, and I just ignore it. And I said, well, I want to figure out what this is. So we both walked down the hallway into the bathroom. Now, this bathroom, I failed to mention, is the bathroom where my grandfather passed away. He was in his shower at the time, and when he got out, they said he just collapsed. When we went in there and looked, there was nothing that had fallen. We looked for everything we could possibly to debunk this anomaly, this sound that we had heard. I looked for like shampoo bottle that may have fallen into the bathtub, a towel rod or something that had fallen. There was nothing. So we just kind of laughed it off and shrugged our shoulders and made the joke of, ooh, it must be a ghost, not really taking that seriously. But I will say that unfortunately about 6 months later, my grandmother did pass away, and all of these occurrences that we had been experiencing ceased to exist. No more noises, no more voices, nothing. And it just kind of made me wonder that, was this my grandfather in the house wondering and looking for my grandmother? Was he mad at me for living there? I hope not. I wouldn't think he would be, but it just leaves your mind wondering. And that's always been kind of a strange story for me, an strange experience. So what do you think? Anyway, I hope you enjoyed it. That's all I've got for you today, and I hope to see you in the next one. Story time. So here we are, but yet another eerie, creepy thing that's happened to me in the past 6 months. So let me give you a little backstory about this house. Now, I do not own, I wish I did own, a 75-year-old beach house. Now, if you don't know, I live in the Grand Strand, Myrtle Beach area, and I'm about 100 yards off of the ocean. Like, you literally have the ocean here, hotels, Ocean Boulevard, and then you have me. In 1954, I believe, Hurricane Hazel came through, and this house was one of the very few left standing. So that's kind of a good thing. But the backstory in this house is apparently years and years and years ago, this place was like a retreat of some sort, like a camp. There's an upstairs and a downstairs. They're two completely separate homes, even though they're joined together in one big home. It was during the fall, and I had come home from work, and I noticed that I kept hearing pots and pans clanking. Now, the owners of the home do come and visit every now and then. I oversee both top and bottom floor, and sometimes they will come and stay for a week or two. And so I naturally thought maybe they were there, So I go and look out the window and look at the driveway, and I notice that there's no cars there, and I'm thinking, oh, that's kind of odd. Well, maybe they dropped some of the family off, and they went to the grocery store in a car to go get things, So I wait, and nothing. No car. I still hear pots and pans, and I'm starting to actually hear some voices downstairs. People talking. My mind's starting to wonder, like, should I go down there and check? I give it a day or two. I started to really think that someone had broken into the home and was squatting downstairs. So I go downstairs and I start knocking on the door. Hello? It's Charles. Anybody home? No one answers. So I naturally go on and open up in the door, and I walk through the house, and all of a sudden I start hearing the voices again, and I go around the corner and realize it's the television, which obviously was the voices that I was hearing, I think, but that was strange. Not to say that it can't happen. I mean, it's technology, weird things happen. There we were again, just like in 2003. So I kind of chalked it up as the TV was on, and I turned it off and went back upstairs and went on about my day. 6 months ago, my son had stayed with me for the weekend. He's still very little, so he likes to sleep in the bed with me because this house kind of gave me the creeps. I don't know why. I think it's just because it's a dark home with the wood paneling. But there's wood paneling throughout this entire house. And I guess all the different people throughout the many years it's been here would sign their name in the wood somewhere. There's little carvings and names and sayings all throughout the house, in little nooks and crannies. It's kind of creepy to find, but it's also kind of cool at the same time. One night we're asleep, and obviously that I don't sleep in the dark anymore. I sleep with the television on, and I have to have some noise. So I'm asleep, and I wake up. just out of the blue. And I'm watching the TV, just kind of laying there, hoping to go back to sleep. And then I hear footsteps down the hallway. And immediately I think, oh, my son's up. I don't want to say his name, but, you know, let me go check on him. And I roll over to get out of the bed, and he's laying right next to me. I was immediately in fear. I didn't know if someone had broken into the house or was there something else. So I grab what I have, I'll show you, next to the bed. This is my little club. I call it Buddy. It's upside down, I think. So I'm holding that, and if you're a parent, you know exactly what I'm about to do next. When you're in the car, you use your arm as a seatbelt. Well, I did that. I'm holding this thing, and I'm reaching over the bed to hold, like I'm going to protect my son with my arm. I hear it come into the bedroom, and the bedroom's lit up with a TV, but I don't see anything. So I am terrified at this point, and I start reciting the Lord's Prayer. That's the only thing I knew to do. And yeah, it just kind of went away. Here we are back at the same situation where I've got footsteps that I don't hear or see anything. Well, I hear it, but I don't see anything. So I don't know. That's all I've got. What do you think? Let me know in the comments.